All right, here we go. We are now reconvening open session. We will now take action, we will now consider action on closed session items. Mrs. James.
Thank you, Mr. Radine. I move that the Board of Trustees rescind the action it took on April 15th, 2019 to propose non-renewal of the term employment contract of Marcus Castile.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. James and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. Tolsan.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the Fort Bend ISD administration, I would like to apologize to Mr. Castile for our action terminating his term employment. In the hearing record, new facts and evidence came to light for the Board of Trustees, information that was not previously known to us when making our decision to non-renew. The facts and evidence that have come to light makes it clear that Mr. Castile's actions did not rise to the level necessary to non-renew. Protecting students as well as teachers is of utmost importance to this board. Mr. Castile, we are sorry for how this has impacted you and your family.
Sorry. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Do we have another closed session item? Mrs. Yes.
I move that the board approve the purchase of approximately 30 acres of real property adjacent to Post Oak and Highway 6 for a potential middle school campus.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Rosenthal and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Mrs. James.
I'd like to ask the administration if we could please check on what the budget for our land purchases are and what purchases we've agreed to date so we can understand where we are in following our bond budget.
Yes, we'll provide that analysis
Thank
in
you.
a timely manner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to board member reports. Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir. This month, board members have attended Touchdown Club of Houston preseason team recognition, State Representative Ron Reynolds' first annual community prayer breakfast, 20th annual back to school scramble golf tournament, Literacy Council of Fort Bend County's 10th annual Great Grown Up Spelling Bee, College Fair and Career Readiness, 2019 TASA TASB Conference, Fort Bend Chamber of Conference, HCC Advanced Manufacturing, Legislative Dinner, Vincent Morales Golf Tournament, Varsity Football Games, First Day of School Visits, GCAASB Executive Board Meeting, GCAASB Regular Meeting, Superintendent Formative Evaluation, Policy Committee Meetings, Student Leadership 101 New Cohort Kickoff Meeting, and also the ribbon cutting for HCC STEM School.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Moving on to special reports. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Dr. Dupree and administration, it occurs to me that this is our first regular board meeting since school started. And I wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you to you and your staff and everyone who worked so hard to get ready for the start of school, which is arguably one of the most, if not the most important days in our calendar. Everyone is working and cleaning and preparing our existing schools and bringing food to the kitchens and getting new books and new curriculum prepared, getting the lawns mowed, and we have school renovations and new schools that also had to be opened on time, and bus drivers practicing new routes and everything. And when you think of the size and scale of our district, it is a monumental effort. And we had the first day of school without incident, and so I'd just like everyone to know how much we appreciate that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. I think we could all echo those same comments. Thank you, Dr. Dupree, and thank you to thanks to the staff. We appreciate all your hard work. Any other special reports? Moving on to the consent agenda, we will be pulling 11C6B.
Mr. Birding, I would also remind the board that we have removed item 11, what is it? D, 2, A, B, C, and D from consideration. They'll be postponed to a later meeting.
All right. May I have a motion?
Mr. Burdine, I move to approve the consent agenda minus 11C 6B and 11D 2A, B, C, and D as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mrs. James. Do we have discussion?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenthal.
I just wanted to remind the administration of my comments on 11C5, where I would like to see some data on that program and updates on the truancy numbers.
Yes, sir, that is on our pending list to get to
Great.
the board in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. May I have a motion for 11C6B?
Mr. Burdine, I move that we approve item 11C 6B as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tossan and a second by Mr. Rosenthal. Do we have discussion? Mrs. Tossan.
So we had a lot of people come and speak to us this evening, and this has been quite a long, drawn-out process. It's been about 1.5 years since the first bone was discovered, and as I said last week, I was the board president when that happened, and so was privy to a lot of conversations and early decision-making and things that were brought to this board as we made those decisions. And I think I said last week that all the decisions we made were in the spirit of doing what was right, in proceeding with dignity and with as much care as we possibly could in preserving the bodies that were found in that location. It has been, Dr. Dupree, thank you for your comments earlier this evening. It has been troubling to see what's been transpiring in the courts, which is very separate and apart from what's been transpiring between the district and the county. I just want to say that. And it is troubling to see, as a member of the bar, as an attorney, it is very troubling to me to read some of what has been filed with the court, which I will say is flat out false. And I know that personally. So it is disturbing to see what has been filed. And it's hard to make sense of it. I'm not really sure what the purpose behind it is. We can speculate, but I won't do that. I'd like to say that we have and continue to listen to all community members. We started with a committee, and I know that things were derailed a little bit when it transferred over to the city of Sugar Land. I wasn't privy to a lot of those conversations, so I can't comment on that specifically, but I do know that every committee that this district put together, all voices were heard. It doesn't mean that we are going to agree with every voice. That's not the way it works. But all voices have been heard, and everyone has been given an opportunity to speak and have input. But we have tried to make decisions taking those voices and those opinions into consideration. It doesn't mean that we're going to make every decision that someone thinks we should make. But however, I will point out that ironically, the decisions that the district is making to reinter the Sugarland 95 remains in exactly the same spot from which they were exhumed begs the question of why people are asking for us to turn reinterment back over to the county, because the county was not and did not at any time say that that's what they were going to do. They were talking about moving the bodies to a different location, and that's just a fact. And what we are saying is that we are going to put them right back in the ground, separately buried, not in a mass grave, which is offensive to me, that anyone would say that. And so I'm confused, really. I'm confused about what some of the accusations and allegations are referring to. I want to say thank you to Mr. Perez, because in the very beginning, he's the one who made the decision to not continue digging, to not continue building, but to wait until we knew what we had. Mr. Moore did bring to our attention that there were potentially bodies on that site, and therefore we did take steps to ensure that either there were none, or if we found something, that we preserved that cemetery. In the beginning, when we discussed moving the bodies to the cemetery that's already established, that was with Mr. Moore's blessing. Mr. Moore's blessing to move the bodies. The minute that changed, as things have been changing, it's kind of been a moving target, we agreed to take a step back, look at the situation again, and make a different decision. And I commend this board for doing that. We stopped building. We cut an entire wing off of the CTE Center, which means students are not being educated there. We have preserved and taken every step legally, ethically, and otherwise to make sure that we are preserving the DNA and allowing for descendants to potentially be found later, which could take years, which is why we are moving forward to reinter the bodies now, which is exactly the plan that the county had, the exact same. Not to leave the remains in boxes for however many years it may take to do DNA analysis and then potentially find descendants. But we are preserving everything so that in the event descendants are found, that the remains can easily be identified and moved if desired. So I just wanted to make those comments publicly. You know, we have done everything we could to be transparent and tell the truth every step of the way. We can't make anybody believe it, but there is plenty of public record, public discussion, court records, filings that show the steps that we have taken and show what the truth is. And so all you have to do is look. All you have to do is look. And all you have to do is want to really get at the truth. And I think there are some people who don't want to really get at the truth. And I think there are attorneys and appointees in this court case that have been reckless with the truth. And it's embarrassing to me as a member of the bar. For all of those reasons, I am going to and would suggest to my colleagues that we approve this item.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. Helliger.
So I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Mrs. Tassan stated something about the reinterment of the bodies and the DNA testing. And so if we to DNA test, right? Well, first of all, I think someone said in the audience, and I listened attentively to make sure I was I going to learn something new today? You know, so I can make sure I understand the perspective. And so I know I heard someone say that we should never have exhumed the bodies. And so I think was mentioned, we can't we can't get DNA if we don't exhume the bodies. And so that's one piece. Two, and I think you were saying this, and I just want to make sure I'm clear, is that for us to do the DNA testing and wait, right? I think you mentioned years. Well, so from my understanding, we can do the DNA testing, but just like of any other, because I'm trying to process this, any other Ancestry.com or those other things, you have to have willing parties, right? So what happens if you do the DNA testing and the bodies and bones are still in the box, and no one comes forward? What happens? So how long do we keep the bodies out? You know, I'm sure there's some type of OSHA requirement on that. I'm sure of it. I don't know what that is, but these are the things that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, I think I heard someone say, what happens if, you know, someone does come and we've buried the bodies, we've reinterred the bodies, and someone comes back and says, that's my cousin or something like that, because the likelihood of it being someone's father is probably slimmer, you know, than it being, you know, because they were young men. Majority of them were young men. But it could be, you know, we could have some, definitely have some older men that could have children. But it will require, in my mind, it will require willing participants, right? So you have to wait on those willing participants in order to make the match, right? Because I know, like for me, my family has never done a DNA testing. We still say we haven't done it at all. So I don't know who, you know, I would be, you know, a match to. So I'm thinking about all those things and processing, you know, the right thing for us to do here, you know. And I really, you know, for me personally, to honor the bodies and honor them is to not have them where they are today. And I really would like for someone to tell me why it's better to keep them out and wait indefinitely for a match. Because we're really talking about a match, you know, because what the mortician talked about last week was how he was going to make sure that everything was identified, inwards, outwards, on the side, even the bag. Yeah, inside, yeah. So unless you're going to wait for a match, what do you do with those bodies? So, I mean, somebody can enlighten me, you know, and help me understand that, you know, maybe I have a different thinking, but right now my thought process is to do the right thing about those bodies. They've been out for 1.5 years. And it's not about being quick, you know. It's not about being quick. And I'm really concerned because there is other conversations going on that's not being presented legally, you know, with the county on this. So I'm not sure why we have so many different thought processes around what's really happening here, especially when all the data and the facts have been provided. So I will say I'm struggling. So I just kind of wanted to add those comments tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Helliger. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. We will now move to our action items. 12A1, consider approval of the 2019 ad valorem tax rate.
Mr. Burdine, I move that we approve action item 12A1 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Tolsan and a second by Mrs. James. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on, 12B1, consider approval of exception for class size waivers.
Mr. Burdine, I move that we approve action item 12B1 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Tolsan and a second by Mr. Rice. Do we have discussion?
Yep.
Mrs. James, I'm sorry. Mrs. James?
Thank you, Mr. Radine. So I had a little bit of a conversation with Dr. Rodriguez this afternoon, and I guess in general, I didn't feel like I got all my questions really answered, in the sense of I have some concern around, particularly around Heritage Rose with a large number of class waivers. And I don't know what the percentage of free and reduced lunch at that campus is, but I think from one of the charts we saw earlier, it's something like 80%, 75 or 80%. I guess when I look at this and I see, you know, first grade classes with 24 and 25 kids, I have some concern about that, because we're trying to teach those kids to read. We've talked about in this boardroom a lot about the priority of literacy and how we have to work hard at that, especially with some of our less advantaged kids. So I just want to make that comment because I just had some concerns about it. I don't know if you have is anything you'd like to say to that, Dr. Rodriguez?
Sure. You know, as we discussed earlier, I think it's important for the Board of Trustees to know that we currently have 9 vacancies that are embedded in the list that you all have in front of you. So the principals are currently working to fill those vacancies. And one of the things I did mention earlier when I spoke to Mrs. James is, you know, principals are going to hire the best candidate for their campus. And we expect principals to hire the best candidate and not to hire just a body for students. We owe it to our students to hire top quality teachers. I do know that by looking at some of these numbers, they should be shocking. When you have 24, you have 25 students in a classroom. But one of the things that we are doing is we are providing paraprofessional support as substitutes. Because from day to day, these numbers fluctuate. Today you're seeing 24 and 25. Tomorrow you may see the same classes at 22 and 23. It is a moving target. So the plan that we've had is we provide support when a certain threshold is met. We provide support to specific campuses based on tiers. We monitor, we speak to the campus principal. The principal's having conversations with the grade level that is being impacted, and we make decisions from there. So, you know, I just want to reiterate the fact that we do have 9 teaching positions or vacancies at this point in time that are embedded that will drop the numbers that you are currently seeing in the list in front of you. With that, we also have a few positions where the principal has hired and they're going through the recommendation process, and those numbers will be dropping. So they've actually recommended a teacher. But for the sake of this meeting and full transparency, we're providing you with the numbers as of today, without the teachers being processed and with vacancies, with 9 vacancies still being shown.
Okay, thank you for that, and I value that we're doing our due diligence and hiring high-quality people to fill these places, and I understand that that takes time, and this isn't the ideal hiring time to finding the high-quality teachers that we want to have in those classrooms. So I recognize that, and I appreciate your team and the principals continuing to find just the right people for the campuses. That being said, I'm concerned about, especially in these younger grades, as I said before. Maybe you could also address, Dr. Rodriguez, for Sullivan Elementary, you've got 20 waivers requested for just that one campus. And this looks like second, third, and fourth grades. Is that are we looking for higher people there to help us with those, or how are we addressing all those classrooms that are have too many kids in them?
Yeah, so they will be receiving paraprofessional support. When it comes to Sullivan, at this point in time, their building has been maxed out when it comes to the use of classrooms. So the support that we're providing is in the form of paraprofessionals, substitute, to ensure that our students are safe. We do understand that the numbers are high, and because of those high numbers, we want to ensure that there are extra personnel that is available to assist teachers with safety.
Okay, and have we considered any, I mean, I know the classrooms are full, but have we consider any alternatives like portables or some other, something like that, because the core of that building, I think, is a little bit bigger than the actual classroom space, right?
Yes, so administration did have a conversation with Ms. Wissenot back in the spring. There were some conversations that occurred back when we were looking at the original projections. And at that point in time, she felt comfortable with the setup that she had. Obviously, numbers are going to fluctuate. We did discuss portables today. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Perez after our conversation, but I can assure you that that conversation is going to continue.
Okay, thank you.
If I may just add, we do have, if you recall, when we come to y'all for approval for portables, we also put some extras to be determined. We have 4 portables that we still have budgeted and available at this point. So we can continue some dialogue, and if we need to bring portables, we could do that.
Okay, well, so let me just make this overarching comment, and then I'll pass the baton to Mrs. Tassan. So these elementary classrooms, it's really important that these kids are able to build relationships with their students. When they have too many students, some with special needs, some with diverse learning styles, some with no experience in school at all, whatever the situation, because some of these on here are kindergarten classes. And it just is concerning to me if we have not run all the traps and considered all the options and opportunity or variety of considerations. And maybe you guys have. I don't know, but I don't have any information about what's been considered or what's not. And I don't have any information about where we might be using paraprofessionals, where we're hiring people, and how we're gonna get through this. What I do know is that when we have a class of 24 and 25 second graders, it is difficult for the teacher to manage that and to make sure everybody is achieving at the level that they need to achieve. Teachers are struggling with all the planning and all the paperwork and all the things that we are doing. And I get it that we are trying a lot of new things and we have things we want people to do, but I also feel like I have to speak up for teachers who are saying, hold the phone. I'm doing the best I can. I'm really working hard. And some of these schools are, and I mentioned Heritage Rose, but there are others on here that have pretty high percentages of free and reduced lunch. And these kids are coming, some of them to us, with a whole lot of problems, underexposed to life, and some obstacles in their learning. And it takes a lot to overcome those obstacles. And and I'm looking at Dr. Hill over there and thinking about special ed kids we're putting in these classrooms too. And I'm just anxious about the burden that we put on the teachers and making sure that we are doing what we can to support them. And that's why I'm bringing these things up, so I can feel confident that we've run the traps. And someone said to me earlier today, this is a routine item. This is a routine item. We do this every year. It's routine in this boardroom because we do it every year, but it's not routine for for the first grade teacher that's got 25 kids and has to try to teach them all to read, and half of them don't have lunch money, and they don't have pencils, and they don't have backpacks, and whatever other things that are their obstacles to learning. So I like to think about every single classroom and every single teacher that's trying their darndest to make these kids have the best opportunity. And so I'll stop talking now because I'm getting kind of mad, but I just really care. I just really care.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mrs. Tossan.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. So I had some similar concerns, and Mrs. James expressed some of the same concerns I had, and I emailed you guys today, particularly about Heritage Rose, because I know that they do have a high number of at-risk kids, and I have some concerns about putting, especially 25, when you get to the first grade level and you're putting 25 kids in a classroom, and like Mrs. James said, and you're trying to teach them to read, especially at that grade level. I did have some concerns about it. I know that I know that overall this is fewer waivers than we've approved in the past, but I was a little surprised at the number of waivers at some of our campuses, and this one in particular stood out to me because I know the campus and I know some of the struggles that they have. So I guess having heard your exchange with Mrs. James, you answered a few of my questions. I would just ask us to please consider and be sure that we have enough aides, instructional aides, or enough paraprofessionals so that they can provide the support that's going to be necessary in those classrooms. Let's make sure that if we can't get one per classroom, let's make sure that we at least have one for every 2 classrooms or something along those lines, because even as a parent of a daughter in special ed, we struggled to get paraprofessional support in the classroom for her and the other kids in special ed that were in that class. So I don't want us to say we're going to do it and then practically it doesn't work. Or it doesn't really provide the support at the campus level when it gets there. I want to be sure that you guys are making sure that it's working for them and that we're providing the support that they need. So I really just wanted to say that. I know, I don't know if we can use student teachers. I don't know if we can, I don't know if it makes more sense to move more of these kids into one classroom and make sure we have a full-time aide all day. I mean, you guys are the educators, so you can work with the principals and teachers and answer those questions. But I have some similar concerns, and I know like Quail Valley, it's maybe not high eco-dis, but they've got some challenges that they're dealing with. So I just want to make sure that we're really providing support for the teachers that they need and for the kids that are in those classrooms. So.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mrs. Hellier? All right. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to 12C1, consider approval of the schematic design for new middle school 16.
Mr. President, I move to approve action item 12C1 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rice and a second by Mrs. Tossan. Do we have discussion? Ms. James.
Thank you. I have a picture of the updates to the schematic design. I was asking about some square footage and I can't read the labels on this. And I'm just checking if that's in the works or what our situation is.
Yes, ma'am. We actually have checked that, and the boys and girls athletic areas are within 100 square foot of each other.
Okay, that's good, because the labels don't seem to be on here anymore. Is that a change? Was there a change?
I guess maybe on this layover, but there wasn't a reason for that. But
Okay, this version. And then we were also asking about instructional pull-out spaces and some of the flexible learning spaces last week. Did we make some changes there?
Yes, ma'am, we did. We went ahead, if you recall, they were both on the same, side of the classroom, and we went ahead and brought them across the hall on each one of the hallways so that it shortened the distance.
Thank you, Mrs. James. Mrs. Tossan?
So I just wanted to thank you guys and the architects and everybody who went back and worked on that and listened to our feedback. So thanks for that.
And I also wanted to add a comment that I would like to see if we could add some turf to the inside of that design so it could be usable, and just provide a space for kids to hang out outside and set and not make a mess. So anyway, thank you very much. We appreciate your hard work. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, we will review our future board meeting agenda items. Dr. Dupree.
All right, in October, we're going to be asking you to approve district and campus performance objectives as well as a superintendent evaluation instrument for 1920. We'll be doing an update on our efforts regarding social emotional learning, including profile of a graduate in trauma-informed care, as well as an update on the Early Literacy Center and full-day pre-K. And then we'll ask you to approve school boundary oversight committee meetings, or members, and give you an update on that process.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.